So we will do roll call to establish a quorum. Okay. Tanya Altman.
Present.
Tammy Vantolt.
I'm here.
Thank you. Janine Graves. Okay. And if I pronounce your names wrong, please correct me with that. Sagi de Guzman? Saji, thank you. I'm so sorry. I knew I was going to butcher it. I apologize. I will not do that ever again. Kim Dow?
Doe, present.
Oh. Okay. Hazel Torres.
I'm here.
BBK? Barbara Barney Knox. Okay. Garrett Chan.
Present.
Kathy Hughes. Jacqueline Bowman. Saskia Kim. Saskia, are you able to unmute? I see your name. We will, board moderator, can you troubleshoot with Saskia to ensure that she's able to come off mute, etc.? And I will go on to the next NEWAC member. Karen Rizzle. Joanne Spetz.
Hello.
Hey, Joanne. And Sandra Miller. And I know that I think Sandra Miller is having some technical difficulties. Was she able to get on?
Saskia, were you able to unmute? I see that you're unmuted. Can you confirm that you can say something?
What is the code to unmute if you're on the phone? I know that sometimes we get her in public comment on the phone and she has difficulty with that. Is it like *6 or something?
I don't think she's on her phone. I think it shows headset. It doesn't show phone.
Okay.
If she's on a computer, it's right in the middle. You'll see start audio. She's unmuted herself, but she's not speaking.
Nothing. So maybe it's something on her end.
And then,
Saskia, if you want to sign out and sign back in, you absolutely can. And we'll elevate you again and try to troubleshoot that with you.
did you get a confirmation from Janine Graves? I didn't hear a.
I did not.
I'm here.
There you go. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I don't think I got to confirm that she was there.
Yeah, I did not. Sorry.
Okay, and Saskia dropped off.
Okay, so she's going to try to sign back in, I'm sure.
Yes.
And then I think we're still
we're missing Kathy Hughes, Jacqueline Bowman, Karen Rizzle, and Sandra Miller.
And Sandra Miller is still trying to get on. She's here. She's trying to get access.
Yes,
so if you
yes.
keep an eye on her.
She was connected, but she didn't have voice or video. So I promoted her, and she still didn't have voice or video. So then I removed her. And
Kathy Hughes just showed up in our attendees. Can you elevate her? And Saskia is back in the attendees list too, if you want to grab her as well.
I don't see Kathy Hughes. Where is, oh, there she is. Oh, yep. There's she gone. Oh, she's gone. She's back. She's gone. Hold on.
Just refresh and you should be able to see her. She's still showing on my screen.
There it goes. Okay. I don't know why she popped to the top. That was weird. Okay, and okay, so Kathy is here. And let's see, Saskia. Let's make her there. Okay. Kathy, Saskia, can you guys confirm that you're able to mute and unmute?
Yes, thank you. This is Kathy Hughes.
Thank you. Saskia, I can see that you're unmuting, but we don't hear you.
She's showing on my end is still muted.
Yeah, muted. Yeah, she's going off and on.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay, we do have quorum, so we will go ahead and open up. I am the board's executive officer, Loretta Melby, or Lori, you guys would hear me as, and I do want to introduce Reza, our BRN legal counsel. Reza, can you unmute?
Yes, good morning, everybody. I am Reza Pejuhesh. I am the BRN's legal counsel. I'm with the DCA Legal Affairs Division.
Okay. Hey, Mark, in case we have any issues, can you go ahead and start recording the web?
sorry. And Sandra Miller is connected by phone now. So Sandra, I think it's *67. She's a calling user. *6 or *6 something. I forget now. I'm sorry.
Sandra, can we check to see you're able to unmute?
667. Can you
There
hear
you
me?
go.
This meeting is being recorded.
I don't know why it's still showing restricted when I try and enter the WebEx from my computer. So I hope this works.
Okay. And Saskia, if you wanted to do a call in, we can try to accommodate you that way as well so we can hear you. We'll just keep an eye out for you in the attendees.
Lori, can you hear me okay? This is Saskia.
I can. Yes, perfect.
Okay, I'm calling in. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so just some real quick, since we did delay on starting the recording, we will go ahead and be asked for the people in BRN staff that are doing minutes is to redo a roll call. So Mark, can you go through and list who is on and who is absent for our note taker, please?
Tanya Altman is on. Tammy Vant Hall is on. Janine Graves is on. Sagi de Guzman is on. Is it Sagi or Saji?
Saji.
Saji. Saji de Guzman is on. Kim Kwang Do is on. Hazel Torres is on. Garrett Chan is on. Kathy Hughes is on. Saskia Kim is on. Joanne Spetz is on. Sandra Miller is on. And
So it looks like the only ones missing are BBK, Jacqueline Brown, and Karen Rizzle.
correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We do have a quorum, and we will open up a little bit late at 11:13. Board moderator, can you go over agenda item 2.0, please?
Good morning. This is the BRN moderator. I will be moderating the meeting. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the committee reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, the question and answer feature will be turned on, and members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment," in the question box, which is typically in the lower right of your screen. I will then call on the individual and unmute their microphone. The individual will have 2 minutes to make their comments. I will not give a warning as your time approaches. I will mute your microphone and will announce that your time has exceeded the time allotted. I will then move on to the next member of the public who has a comment. Please note that the question and answer feature is being used only as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. This is not a means to ask questions of the moderator or members of the committee. Such inquiries submitted using this feature will not be answered. When asking a question, please make sure the question is directed at the host, me, in the dropdown. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item. Finally, when committee members or senior staff are not speaking, I would like to remind them to mute their microphones. If I detect background noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will mute your microphones. Thank you.
Thank you, board moderator. I just want to call everybody's attention to this, our very first NEWAC meeting in the new established committee, and we have 45 participants, so that's exciting. We will go on to item 3.0, public comments for items not on the agenda. This is not a forum to discuss agenda item 4.0, 5.0, or 6.0, or 7.0. It is, and the reason I'm saying that is in our last board meeting, it was a little confusing. So this is for public to come in and use this forum to say that they would like certain items added to future agendas. And then as the committee hears them, they are able to vote to see whether or not that is something that they want to add to a future agenda. So we will open it up to public comments for items not on the agenda and items for future agendas, 3.0.
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. Sorry, 1 second here. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Board EO Melby, there are no public requests for comments. Would you like me to close this window?
Please. Okay, item 4.0 is introductions and welcomes and introductions, sorry. And I know that a lot of you guys know each other, but because we are establishing this new, I would like to take the moment to have each one of you guys introduce yourself, share with the team, what you are here representing and give us a little history. I will do a screen share really quick just so that you guys can see that we did update on our website share application, sorry. So on our website, we are able to now, it's now sharing the entire thing. That's okay. On the website, we do have the Nursing Education and Workforce Advisory Committee, and we do have each one of the members listed, what their classification is, what their appointment date is, and what the term expiration is. This is public for everybody to come in and check. I know that there was confusion with the last NEWAC on who the members were and what classification they were here and representing. So we did want to go ahead and update that, and I wanted to share that out with you. So the very first one that we will open up with would be Tammy Altman.
Hi, it's actually Tanya, not Tanya.
Tanya, I'm so sorry. I was reading down, combining the first two names. I apologize.
That's fine. I'm Tanya Altman. I'm the chair of the Sacramento State School of Nursing, and I'm here as an education representative for directors of nursing programs for CACN. I've been the director for 7 years, so gives you my history.
Thank you so much. We'll go to Tammy Van Tol.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the Dean of Nursing at Riverside City College, and I'm also the COADN President for the South.
And then Janine?
Hi, I'm
Graves?
Janine Graves, representing Sutter Health and Direct Care Nursing. I'm a former BRN board member and former BRN president. So very excited to see everybody and looking forward to doing good work here.
Thank you. Saji de Guzman?
Hi, my name is Saji de Guzman. I am the APRN representative. I am NP for 7 years, working in infectious disease and also mainly urology and urologic oncology.
Wonderful, thank you. Just for future, if when you're speaking, you can move a little bit closer to where your microphone is at. It was a little difficult to hear you, but we were able to get that. Sometimes a separate microphone or a headset is appropriate as well if you're sitting further away from like a laptop or something. Okay, Kim Doe.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kim Doe. I'm a practicing nurse midwife at San Francisco General Hospital, serving in the practicing APRN role. I'm also on faculty at UC San Francisco, the Nurse Midwifery Education Program.
Thank you. Hazel Torres.
Good morning. My name is Hazel Torres. I am a professional development director for the region of Southern California, and I represent the employer groups both in the inpatient and the outpatient arena.
Thank you. Garrett Chan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Garrett Chan. I'm the president and CEO of Health Impact, which is the California Nursing Workforce and Policy Center. And it's a pleasure to see everybody today and get to work with everyone. I'm looking forward to the work ahead. So I represent, I guess, nursing professional organizations. I'm trying to find that website that you were showing, Lori. So whatever Lori has on the website is what I'm representing.
Nice. So for the public, if you go in and type in the search on the top of our website, rn.ca.gov, you could type in advisory committee, it will pull it up, or you can go in about the board. And once you get to the section about the board, you can see advisory and you'll pull that up and you'll see that NUAC or NEWAC, I've heard it called both ways, is listed on the bottom of that webpage. Kathy Hughes.
Hi, I'm Kathy Hughes. I'm a registered nurse and the director of the Nurse Alliance of SEIU California. We represent about 35,000 registered nurses across the state in both public and private sector.
Thank you. Jacqueline Bowman? Or was she one that was not able to be here? I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Saskia Kim. We heard you for a second, Saskia. There we go.
Sorry. I'm Saskia Kim, California Nurses Association. I am lead regulatory policy specialist. CNA represents more than 100,000 nurses who work at the bedside, and I am in the union rep role. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Rizzle. Sorry. Joanne Spetz.
Hi, I'm Joanne Spetz. I'm at the University of California, San Francisco in multiple different departments and affiliations. I am the NERD data representative. Data nerds are us, contractor to the Board of Registered Nursing for something like 15 years or more.
Thank you. And Sandra Miller.
Hi, I'm Sandra Miller. I am the Vice President for Assessment Technology Institute, and I am a public member and can't log into the WebEx, so I'm sorry I can't see all of your faces.
Hopefully we can troubleshoot that and we'll get you on so you can participate and see everybody on our next NEWAC.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
No problem. Any comments within the committee here before we open it up to public comment at this point?
Lori, this is Reza,
Yes.
legal counsel. I had a chance to introduce myself. I thought we should give Heather Hoganson a chance to introduce herself. I see her in the list of panelists.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to have her do that when we got to our agenda item, but we can do that in advance. No problem. Heather Hoganson is not part of our typical advisory committee team, but I will have her introduce herself. She is here representing DCA. Heather?
Good morning, everyone. I am the regulatory counsel, so if there are questions about regulations, I'm your girl for that. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. And thank you, Reza, for bringing that up.
Lori, I have a question, and I don't know when the right time is for this question, but in the previous iteration of NEWAC, we had to attend as a new person, had to attend an orientation. Is that going to be covered in any of by the Department of Consumer Affairs? Is that going to be addressed in any of the agenda items today, or do we need to agendize that later? Just because we were doing introductions and some people are new to this and other people have been around for some time.
Yeah,
I don't know when the right time is to bring it up. Sorry.
It is a great time to bring it up. That's what these open kind of sections are for. We will be going over charter and kind of process like that and term limits and everything. And there is a board member orientation that DCA offers, and we will be sending you out information on that for each one that has not gone through that orientation and get you lined up for that. They are still holding that training virtual. And there is one more session that is being offered this year. And I will have Macaulay Sarah and send that information out. We do have a couple board members that need to go to that as well. So I think that meeting will be highly attended by BRN. Thank you, Garrett.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we go to public comment, or any comments from the committee members? Sorry. Okay, BRN moderator, please open it up for public comment on agenda item 4.0.
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment."
Mark, while you were waiting for our commenters to come up, I was just informed that the last board member orientation training this year is for Wednesday, October 12th. And then I was also made aware that it was sent out in your appointment letter, that information. So if you guys have access to the appointment letter that you received, all information should be in that. However, we will go ahead and send out an updated email so that you have it at the top of your inbox. I know how they can get full.
Thank you. Board EO Melby, there are no public requests for comment. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Thank you. And we will move on to agenda item 5.0. Agenda item 5.0 is discussion and possible action regarding election of chair and vice chair. On each of these committees, it is a priority, obviously, to have a chair and a vice chair. They work together. They serve kind of as an admin team for this committee. They help to develop the agendas, gather the materials, and really do quite a service in really moving your team along so that we can make this a productive advisory committee. So with that said, I would like to open it up to you all to have volunteers of who would want to be the chair of this committee. And then we'll take it to a vote if there's more than one person. We do need a chair.
I'd like to volunteer. This is Garrett. I'll help you out, Lori.
Garrett? Is there anybody else that is interested in becoming chair? Okay, Garrett, it looks like you are the only person. We will go ahead and take a vote though, just to make sure. I can't necessarily make a motion to accept you as chair, but if someone could make a motion to accept Garrett as chair and somebody will second that motion to accept Garrett as chair, then we will go out to public comment. So I do need someone to make a motion and second it, please.
This is Tanya Altman. I would make a motion to accept Garrett Chan as the chair of the committee.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
This is Janine Graves.
I second that motion.
Thank you. I've got Janine Graves first, so she beat you to that. So I have Janine Graves as a second. Okay, so we have a first and a second for the motion to accept Garrett. Board moderator, can you take it out to public comment? And that's to accept Garrett as chair of the Nursing Education and Workforce Advisory Committee.
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for a comment. I have activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Board EO Melby, there are no public requests for comment. Would you like me to close this window?
Please, thank you. So at this point, I would like to take it to a vote. Let me pull up my list here, I'm sorry. Tanya Altman?
Yes.
Tammy Van Hol?
Yes.
Janine Graves?
Yes.
Saji de Guzman?
Yes.
Kim Doe?
Yes.
Hazel Torres?
Yes.
Garrett Chan?
Can you hear me?
I can now, yes.
Okay, great.
Kathy Hughes?
Yes.
Jacqueline Brown? Or no, sorry, I keep calling her and she's not here. Bowman, sorry. Saskia Kim?
Yes.
Erin Rizal? Joanne Spetz?
Yes.
Sandra Miller?
Yes.
Thank you. We will now see if there are any volunteers for vice chair.
This is Janine Graves. I'd like to volunteer simply because I'd like to learn from Dr. Chan.
Okay, so we have one person. Is there any other person who would like to volunteer? Okay, we have a single nomination. Does somebody want to make a motion to accept Janine Graves as vice chair?
I enthusiastically nominate Janine.
That's Garrett Chan for our note takers.
And
so
it's Garrett Chan.
Thank you. Do I have a
very
second?
Enthusiastic.
This is Hazel. I will second that.
Thank you. Okay, we have a first and a second to have Janine Graves serve as vice chair of the NEWAC committee. We'll take it out to public comment.
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for a comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Board EO Melby, there are no public requests for comments. Would you like me to close this window?
Please. Thank you. Okay, we'll go for a roll call vote. Tanya Altman,
Yes.
Tammy Van Holt,
Yes.
Janine Graves,
Yes.
Saji de Guzman,
Yes.
Kim Do,
Yes.
Hazel Torres,
Yes.
Garrett Chan,
Yes.
Kathy Hughes,
Yes.
Saskia Kim,
Yes.
Joanne Spetz,
Yes.
Sandra Miller.
Yes.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 6.0. And Garrett, your chair, do you want to take over?
Sure. With a lot of help. So Lori, you are expert at this. And before we get started on 6.0, I just want to thank the advisory committee and definitely Lori, you and your team. I'm looking forward to working with the board staff very closely, as well as with legal counsel, Reza. And I'm just going to say that this is an opportunity for us to come together and think through the issues that are confronting nursing in a very difficult time. And I welcome all viewpoints. I'm excited to work with labor. I'm excited to work with direct care practitioners, education. So I think we're going to have a really good time. And I look forward to doing great work with this team. And then make our recommendations onward so that they can hear the voice of nurses and experts in the field in California. So congratulations, welcome everybody. And I'm so thankful to have Janine with us because it's going to be really exciting. So thank you. Item 6.0, which is the discussion and possible action regarding meeting dates for 2023. Lori, I'm wondering if, and I cannot recall, in the charter, do we have dates? Was it 2 meetings a year?
It is currently set at 2 meetings a year. Yes. And then, as you guys know, so as you guys may not know, sorry, I'm used to interacting with Garrett, and he knows this process. If there ever is a urgent need and it is identified in advance, we can, as agenda item, put on there to vote for an additional day or request an additional day, have a discussion about that and vote that for an additional meeting. But currently we are set at 2 a year, and that looks like that's actually what would be carried over for our sunset bill as well, when this committee will be established in statute. So it'll be a protected committee and something that we are obligated to continue and not an ad hoc. So that will be exciting. So in our packet materials on agenda item 6.0, there is talk about it. We will be meeting twice a year, generally in the spring and the fall. The meetings are typically scheduled for 90 minutes. Of course, when we're working with the chair and the vice chair, if it is deemed that we do need to have a longer meeting, we will reach out to the committee members and ask it for availability and extend it out. And work at that point. But the goal is to do 2 meetings a year, 90 minutes each, and use this forum as more of a report out, so that we can do, if there's a lot of work that has to be done, we can break it up into 2-member committees. They can work on subcommittee stuff together as not to violate Bagley-Keene. And then those subcommittees can work with BRN staff, reach out to legal, myself, your liaison, etc., and get a lot of work done in between the meetings, so that we do more of a report out at the meetings, similar to our board meetings, and a vote to accept or whatever action you guys choose to do at that point and move on. This is how we do most of our meetings, our board meetings, where we will do some information only presentations. But if you guys are familiar with our board meetings, most of the work is done in advance by other stakeholders and other subcommittees. And then at the board meeting, we bring that work to the board, present it to them, and they accept, or they make a motion to accept, they make a motion to deny, or they do no action, defer making any action. And sometimes it's just information only. So we do want this to be a productive committee. And so I wanted to give some background on that as we do look at establishing a date. So this group is one of our 4 advisory committees that serve to give recommendations and such to our board. We have a nurse practice advisory committee, a nurse midwife advisory committee, the advanced practice registered nurse advisory committee, and the nursing education and workforce advisory committee. So you will see that on the materials, page 13, there is a board committee and advisory committee meeting schedule for the year presented. We are scheduled to try to accommodate you guys within the month of March. It did look like it got erased on our committee, materials there, but you can see that it goes February blank April. So to fill in, it would be March, and then again in September. So if you guys are okay with this, what we would like to ask is for you guys to decide on either some suggested dates or a week within the month. And so we're looking at either establishing it to be the beginning of a month, maybe the end of the month. You guys can say that we would like to meet on the first Tuesday of each month or the second Wednesday of each month. But that is where we would have this, and this should be set for the year in advance. So you guys should have time to clear your schedules so that we can continue to have an amazing turnout. We're up to 48 participants right now on this call. So again, very excited about that. So back to you, Garrett, if you have any more questions, or if you want to solicit some dates and start to kind of get that worked out for us for March and September of next year.
Great, thank you
I'd like
so much.
Garrett, may I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Is this Joanne? Joanne, announce yourself.
Yes, this is Joanne.
This is Joanne Spetz.
Yes, this is Joanne Spetz. Yes. So in past incarnations of this committee, one of the activities has been to review and provide feedback on suggested changes, primarily for the survey of nursing education programs, which I am totally cool with that being done in the subcommittee. That said, if the committee's vote could possibly change those recommended revisions, in order to meet our timelines, we would need to have any binding votes that could change the committee's guidance to occur before September. Once we are in September, it is too late for us to change survey questions to meet the timeline for that survey. So I don't think that there's anything in our contract that requires a vote of the NUAC for changes to the survey, but if procedurally you would want that type of a vote to exist, or a opportunity for the entire committee to weigh in, which then has, I know, various legal requirements around it, that September date may be too late.
We could actually agendize that, Joanne, for the March meeting. We can have items suggested, because again, this is an advisory committee, so they make recommendations to our board. And so what we can do is discuss in the March committee items that they would like to see on the report. We can then collect that information, and then we would not need to have a specific affirmative vote that would be accepted. So once I get that feedback in March, then we can use that feedback as a recommendation to work with you to get that finalized. So we would not have to adjust the March or September meetings, but we would want a placeholder on the March agenda to have a discussion around that survey. Would that serve okay for that?
We can do our best to work with that. One of the challenges is that we are typically still analyzing and finishing out the reports. And so we may not have all the feedback from the survey respondents, who often provide their own feedback to the survey. But, you know, and I would also suggest that we add to that items to delete from the survey, because anybody on the education representatives on this committee are aware that the survey has become very long, and if we add anything, we will also want there to be discussions about what to delete so that we do not unduly burden our education deans and directors.
Sounds great. Thank you. We will go ahead and agendaize that for the March meeting.
Right. And one other thing, Joanne, I think that might be helpful is to talk conceptually about the issues and trends that we're seeing, as opposed to perhaps exact items, to help kind of guide your work, so things like perhaps COVID is going to, we could say COVID should come off. We should add this, monkeypox, I don't know. So, you know, I think that we can talk conceptually, and then we can leave it to you and your team perhaps to, you know, create the correct items.
Yes, we also have some
That'll work for us.
We also have some information from NCSBN about specific questions that they're looking to have that we can get nationwide. And that might be something we can do to bring up as well. So it looks like we're still okay then with this discussion for a March and a September meeting. Do we have any dates that stand out, like the second Tuesday of the month, or the third, you know, the fourth Thursday, or something to that extent that we can kind of do an established pattern?
So I think maybe the established pattern might be a little tough for this year for September, only because it's coming so quickly. Sorry, and because of the
2023, Garrett, sorry. So
2023.
Yeah,
okay.
This is our fall meeting right now. I don't know that we'll have a chance to get another meeting this year. It really will depend on staffing and such. I can attempt, and we can call out for a quorum at that point. But for this calendar here that's voting, it's for the 2023 date. So we do not have to look for September on this one.
Got it. So if you can, everybody can go to their March calendars to 2023. Let's see if we can come up with something like like what Lori is suggesting. I know there are quite a few conferences in March, and I believe COEDN, Tammy, you have your meeting, is that right, in March?
Yeah, we do. I just can't, I don't know what the dates are right off. I want to say it's the week of the 14th, but I could be wrong.
Is it on your website? Do you know? Let me go to the website and see if you have it there. I don't see it on the events
no, I just got signed
yet.
this week. Yeah.
Oh, it got signed this week. Okay.
Yeah.
Does it usually happen early in or later in the month? Do you remember? It depends.
It depends. I want to say it's the week of the 14th, but again, I won't know. I have a meeting later today.
And then just to be clear, we can vote on these specific dates and also include in that vote for flexibility, so that if we do have to move a date, we can still establish quorum and have a date moved within that month.
Okay. Yeah, and I apologize. Yeah, I apologize. We have to do it this way as opposed to doing a doodle poll because we can't violate Bagley-Keene laws. And so it kind of is a little bit like, what date works for you? So let me.
If I could jump in real quick, this is Reza. If you can sort it out here, great. I have seen other boards utilize Doodle. I had never known what that was before, but where board staff are actually the ones who are kind of managing the Doodle poll. For those who don't know, I think Doodle allows you to ask people what their availability is for scheduling things. So rather than a committee member soliciting input from the other committee members, it would be a staff person who does that and then shares with the committee what the kind of consensus or the date that worked for the most would be. Again, if you can do it here without the need for that, great. But I just did want to clarify that I've seen that used, and there probably is a way to do it and still stay consistent with the Open Meeting Act.
Yeah, so if you
But
guys
I do
would
appreciate
wish-
you keeping that at the front of your mind. So thank you.
Yeah. So Garrett, if you guys wish, we could just vote on the months, accept the calendar as it's presented, and then the board liaison will send out an email with some availability between those months, and we'll get the date that has the most quorum, the most people to ensure that we have a quorum, and then go forward with that if you choose to do that.
I think that would be helpful, and just in the interest of time, I would make a motion that we accept the calendar of having our regularly scheduled meetings for 2023 in the months of March and September, with staff assisting with that coordination.
Great, thank you. Can we get a second, please?
This is Tanya Altman. I will second that motion.
Garrett, you want to take us out to public comment?
Great, yep. So yes, can we open up for public comment, Mark, please?
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you'll have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Chan, there are no public requests for comments. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thanks, Mark. Okay. Any further discussion from the board or the advisory committee members? No? Okay. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. So Lori, do you want me to go down the list, or do you go down the list?
So you as the chair would now take this part over and you would do a roll call vote. If you want me to assist you with that the first time, you can, but we are missing just 3 people. BBK is not here, and Jacqueline and Karen are not here.
Great, thank you. So I can go ahead and take that. So I'll do the roll call vote. So Tanya Altman.
Yes.
Tammy Bentel. Tammy, are you still with us? Tammy, Tammy, did you vote? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Tammy did not vote. She's not coming off mute, so maybe she had to step away. We can move on to the next one.
Okay, great.
I'm sorry, I had to take a phone call, so I'm sorry. Yes, I vote that we can have the meetings in March.
In September, with board staff to assist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you agree? Okay, great. Janine Graves?
Yes.
Thank you. Saji de Guzman?
Yes. Agreed. Yes.
Thank you, Saji. Kim Do?
Yes.
Thank you, Kim. Hazel Torres?
I agree.
Thanks, Hazel. Garrett Chan, yes. Kathy Hughes?
Yes.
Great, thanks, Kathy. And I'm sorry, Jackie Bowman is not with us today, or is she? Are you?
Correct. She is not, and Karen is not, as well as BBK.
Okay, great. Sorry, thank you. Saskia Kim?
Yes.
Great, thanks, Saskia. Joanne Spetz?
Yes.
Great, thanks, Joanne. And Sandra Miller?
Yes.
Great, motion passes. And I want to thank the board staff for organizing us and getting us together. Okay, moving on to the next agenda item is agenda item number 7.0, discussion and possible action regarding the draft regulatory language pertaining to the California Code of Regulations Title 16, Section 1410.5, regarding course requirements in natural sciences, anatomy, physiology, and microbiology courses with a lab component for endorsement applicants. So, Lori, can you help introduce this topic? Since
I will. So I will introduce the
thanks.
topic, and then I will have Heather Hoganson give some further explanation on that. And so in our last board meeting, sorry, not last board meeting, but in our May board meeting, the board voted on some draft regulatory language. You will see that in your materials. It does start on page 15. And in your materials, that is the draft language that was accepted by our board to add a new section to the California Code of Regulations. We currently have 1410, which discusses the licensing process, and 1410.5 would be a call out specific for endorsement applicants. The reason that this was identified and brought forward is when nurses who are licensed in other states have tried to become licensed through the endorsement process into California, they have not been able to do so quickly because they're identified as having a deficiency in the education requirement for licensure. That deficiency typically shows that they have taken an anatomy course, they have taken a microbiology course, they have passed both those courses, but they do not meet the requirements outlined in 1426 that the education for licensure requires laboratory component of both microbiology and a laboratory component of anatomy and physiology. One school that I could specifically kind of call out is Arizona State University. We met with them earlier this year because their students that they were graduating in just our neighbor state was not able to obtain licensure after graduation in our state because their requirement was not to have a microbiology with lab. We did a workaround with the program director that they put on their website, and they do some counseling to their students who think they might want to become licensed in the future in California to take a microbiology course. They do have that offered at their university, and they were able to do that, but that was not clear to some of the applicants. Additionally, it did cause some strife from applicant to applicant because you could have two people graduate from the same program, one get licensed in California and one not, because based on where they did their prerequisites or based on the courses that they chose as their prerequisites. And so there was a lot of confusion. This became prevalent more and more and more. You would have a nurse that was licensed for 20 years in 3 other states practicing nursing and then want to come to California, and they were not able to without going back to school 20 years later to obtain a microbiology with lab or an anatomy physiology with lab. That delayed them being able to be licensed in California and to move with family or significant others, et cetera, to come out here for jobs. So this was something that our board felt it was time to address. We did do some regulatory language. We did present it to our board. Our board did vote to accept it. So what we would like to do now is open it up for discussion here within the NEWAC and serve as kind of like a stakeholders meeting, get some feedback, see further thoughts on this, anything that you would like us to address that you think we may not have addressed, any items that you might have suggestions for future agenda to kind of continue to work on this process. I will now pass it off to Heather Hoganson so she can kind of talk more about the legal aspects and the process of regulatory change and what has to occur in order for that to happen within the California Code of Regulations, Title 16.
Hey, Lori, real quick, this is Reza. I'm not sure, I apologize if I missed you explaining this, but just in case, I thought it might be helpful as a reminder. NEWAC had a meeting tentatively scheduled, I think, what was it, May? Somewhere
April,
around there.
right before,
April.
Yeah, we had it scheduled for April 28th.
And that was a very kind of weird time for holding meetings due to the fact that for that very brief period, we had to conduct them in person, which has since changed. But at that time, we were, even though the meeting was scheduled, we did have quorum issues, and so it had to be pushed back. So this discussion about this particular issue was going to take place before the language went back to the board, but because of that rescheduling, that's why it kind of is happening in this way. But still definitely not too late to get the valued input from this committee. So just in case there was any kind of confusion about, why are we talking about this now, I just wanted to clarify that. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, so greetings again. I'm Heather Hoganson, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about regulations. For those of you who have attended the board member orientation, you may have heard my spiel already. And for those of you who have not, this will be a preview. So generally, when a board adopts some language, there is an internal process that occurs where staff writes an initial statement of reasons to sort of justify and explain what the board is proposing to do. A package of documents that includes the initial statement of reasons, a notice, the text, etc., gets reviewed by the director of the Department of Consumer Affairs under Business and Professions Code to make sure that it satisfies health and safety requirements. Once that has been approved by the director of DCA, it goes to agency, and that's our umbrella agency, the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. Once they have approved it and considered any fiscal or economic impacts that the regulation proposal would cause, it would then go to the Office of Administrative Law, OAL, and then it would be published in the California Notice Register for a 45-day public comment period. That allows members of the public to say, this is a bad idea, this is a great idea, this would be better with a tweak, however they want to address the language that's proposed. And then that language, all those comments need to be reviewed and considered by the full board before the final statement of reasons can be submitted to the Office of Administrative Law. If, because of comments or because of anything else going on, new legislation or changes in scientific advancements, whatever, the language is changed, it is then given back to the public in another noticed comment period for 15 days if it's a related change, or 45 days if it's an unrelated change. Usually modified text on a regulatory package within DCA goes out for 15-day changes. And then that's a wash, rinse, and repeat sort of thing. So if more comments come in and say, yeah, you say 10, but maybe it should be 8, that number could be changed. It goes back out to 15-day comment again, before ultimately it ends up at the Office of Administrative Law, again, after having been re-reviewed by the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and by the Business Consumer Services Housing Agency. It's also reviewed at that point by the Department of Finance to just ensure that the fiscal and economic impacts are considered properly. Only after the Office of Administrative Law approves it can a regulation become law and go into effect. And they usually go into effect on a quarterly basis. One thing, so your role in this process is that you would also be reviewing text and making recommendations to the board. And so the board could take that into account based on your subject matter expertise in this. Again, if you have ideas for regulations, you are subject matter experts and can discuss this. If I recall correctly, at the May board meeting, there a couple of you were online and did participate in the public comment phase of that, as we talked about not only 1410.5, but also 1426. And so some of you are familiar with the public comment that goes on at the board meeting, but I also just wanted to point out that the public comment outside also happens, and it's posted on the website. Anyone who is on the board's mailing list, email listserv, would get notice of that as well. And so they would be able, or they could ask for a hard copy list as well. So are there any questions about that OAL process and making regulations?
This is Garrett. Thank you so much for the overview. Just to confirm, I don't know if I heard this, but would you say that this is under the Administrative Procedures Act?
So the Administrative Procedure Act, Government Code, Section 11340 and following. The first portion of the Administrative Procedure Act governs regulations. The second part governs hearings and administrative hearings. So we are under the first part, yes.
So if somebody were to say that, and I'm just asking this for clarity, because somebody might say, oh, they're following the Administrative Procedures Act. They may or may not say specifically the first section. That would be equivalent to what you're describing right now, or is that incorrect?
Yes, this is the process under the APA process, the Administrative Procedure Act process. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because sometimes people use shorthand language and they say, oh, we're following the Administrative Procedures Act, and then just want to connect that term to what you just described.
Right, and part of, because BRN is a board and subject to the Open Meeting Act, there is also that component. So the two together are both followed in promulgating regulations.
Great, thank you.
The public actually gets a little extra notice because things would go on the board agenda before they even go out to comment.
Awesome.
Thank you, Heather. I'm sure that it's in response to, as we did receive a comment letter over a different regulatory process that's going forth that did have some questions about the Administrative Procedure Act. And it particularly said that specifically Government Code Section 11349C requires that each regulation meet the standard of clarity defined to mean written or displayed, so that the meaning of the regulation will be easily understood by those persons directly affected by them. And so that is absolutely true, and that is something that we're always striving for. So that clarity, thank you, Garrett, for bringing that forward. That is what we intend to do, and that is part of the multiple review process. It starts off with staff. It goes from staff to the Chief of Legislation, which is Marissa, and she is new to our board. That then works in alignment with our DCA legal Reza, who reviews it. Then it goes to Heather Hoganson at DCA, who's on the call as well. She reviews it. And then once it goes through those 2-level legal reviews, it will go to the DCA director, up through the Business Consumer Agency, and then to OAL. OAL then does another review to ensure that it does meet the regulatory standard of clarity before it goes out to public comment. And so if there is anything that is identified that did happen in one of our previous packages that went forward on 1427, OAL reviewed it and identified that it wasn't clear in the way that it was submitted. And so then we withdrew that package, worked with OAL to get it to be much more clear, re-put it back to the board after all the same legal review, and brought that back forward, and is now currently in a 15-day public period for public comment period. So just for clarification on that, every regulation that we do right is in the intent of making it clear and to assist in the process with people that are affected by it, to have a clear understanding of it, so that we are not having to identify different policies and procedures around it, or fall into the realm of underground regulations. Our regulations serve as our policy to help us enact statute, that the statute may need some additional clarification.
And just to follow up, so it's the Administrative Procedure Act, Government Code 11349 lists the things that OAL will review a regulation for. And the first one is authority. Do you have the power to do what you're saying you want to do? Second, are you actually enacting a referenced statute? Is that appropriate? Third is consistency. Is this consistent with your other regulations and other laws? Fourth is that clarity standard. Is it written in a way that is understandable by the public who it will be regulated by that regulation? Fifth would be non-duplication. We don't want to restate the law just for the purpose of restating the law. And the last pillar, pillar 6, is necessity. Is it actually necessary to do this? And that's what those documents that staff prepares and are reviewed, the statements of reasons, explain, why is this necessary? How is this implementing the law? How does this further the board's mission? So that's, OAL's review on that covers those pillars, and they will say, no, we don't think it's necessary, or we think it's too duplicative, or we think it's not clear. And every agency I've ever worked with or heard about has noted that OAL very often will make some minor change, suggestion, or tweak to something in that package on their review, no matter what. It's just, it's kind of a, like death and taxes.
It's a given. Right. It's a given.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to open it up to the advisory committee members to give perspective on this proposed regulatory change. So, committee members, what are your thoughts?
Hi, this is Hazel. I'll be brave, because I think I just wanted, when we're talking about clarity, so what is being proposed is that we remove this requirement? Is that what is being proposed?
Right. So it appears that the proposed language is saying, and I think if I'm reading it correctly, if you go to subsection B of 1410.5, an applicant licensed in another jurisdiction who has been practicing in good standing for more than 2 years will not need to retake any anatomy, physiology, or microbiology courses that include a laboratory component. That is pursuant to the existing regulations for schools of nursing within California, which is section 1426. If the application required by section 1410, which talks about the application, includes proof of already successfully completing anatomy, physiology, and microbiology coursework with or without a lab component as part of their nursing education preparation. Does that answer your question, Hazel?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Apologies for that.
No, this is exactly how it should be. And welcome to the new members. And there's going to be questions and clarifications that are going to be required. And so we welcome any kind of inquiries to help you understand what we should do in the future. So, and we value your expertise.
Yeah, so some further background, and Garrett brought up 1426 as well. So I'll take this opportunity to provide additional clarification. In our California Code of Regulations, Title 16, there's a section that is dedicated specifically to pre-licensure nursing education. Within that section, it's Article 3 of the Title 16. There are several regulations that start at 1420 and end with 1432. And 1420 is definitions, and 1432 talks about changes to a program. And so encompassed in there is every single regulation that our pre-licensure nursing programs are held to. Within 1426, it specifically talks about the required curriculum for California approved nursing programs. And within that, they define that you have to have 58 semester units, 18 units of theory, 18 units of clinical. You have to have 6 units of communication. That communication is oral, written, and group communication. You have to have related sciences, and those related sciences are the ones that we're talking about here. You have to have anatomy, physiology, and micro, each one of those with a lab component. And then you have your behavioral and social sciences, which are typically your psychology and your sociology. And that's 16 semesters. And those are typically built into a nursing program as co-requisites or prerequisites. They don't have to be nursing specific. They can be part of the general education required delivered at the community college or the university or any of the academic institutions that are approved. And then there are further clarifications that specifically go down what is required within the nursing curricula. And that nursing specific curricula is the 18 semester units of theory and the 18 semester units of clinical. And within the theory and the clinical that are nursing specific, they break that down into 5 sections. And that's med surg, geriatrics, psychiatric mental health, obstetrics, and pediatrics. Those courses must be concurrent, which means if you build it within a semester, you have to offer the theory component and the clinical component within that same semester. If you break that semester up into 8 weeks and 8 weeks of a 16-week semester, the board does not get any more specific with that. So you could hold a theory to be completed the first 8 weeks of the semester and a clinical to completed the second 8 weeks of the semester. It just does not allow for that clinical component to be carried over into the following semester. Additionally, within that, they talk about instructional outcomes. Within those instructional outcomes, they have things like quality improvement, critical thinking, human sexuality, cultural diversity. Those are all aspects that are covered within there. And then they talk about that there should be pretty much threads throughout the entire nursing curriculum that is developed for pre-licensure that go over basic intervention, growth and development, relationship therapeutic communication, again, the natural sciences, the nursing process, etc. And then what is currently up in the regulatory process right now for change is Section G. And Section G talks about the hour to unit calculation, which is 1 hour of instruction in theory each week equals 1 unit, and 3 hours of instruction in clinical each week equals 1 unit. And then the additional statement that is the board voted to remove, and it's actually in our sunset bill as well, so we'll see if that moves through, will be with the exception of initial nursing course that teaches basic nursing sciences in a skills lab, 75% of the clinical hours in the course must be in a direct patient care. And so that allows for your health assessment of your fundamentals of nursing to be 100% on campus. They do not have to have hands-on, but then your med surg, OB, ped, psych, geri, and I think that was all of them, must have 75% in the direct patient care. The remaining 25% that's out there can be anything that program director, content expert, lead instructor design that meets your objectives. That could be simulation, that could be observation, that could be anything that they want to do additionally that, because the board only opines on the direct patient care aspect of that. That was voted in our board to be changed, changing it to a 500 minimum, which allows for 30 units in each content area. That 500 minimum means that any hour above that can be 100% simulation. You don't have to wait for a state of emergency. You don't have to lose a clinical site to do 100% sim above that 500 at any point in your curriculum. Additionally, the 30 hours in each unit really allows for the nursing program directors to have a lot of flexibility with that concurrency requirement. So as long as you've met the 30, if you work with your NEC, you can move those hours around. Sorry about that, guys. I should have had my phone silenced, and I did not. And so that's the background as to why we are looking at adding in 1410.5. So when we have that as a requirement in California, that they must have the laboratory components, and we ensure across the board that all 156 approved pre-licensure nursing programs have that built into their curriculum, we can't ensure that for out-of-state programs, because each one of the boards of nursing, there's 54 boards of nursing and territories that are underneath the National Council of the State Boards of Nursing. They define their own standards. They define their own scope of practice. They define their own licensing requirements, including background checks. They define their own education requirements. They define whether or not they license an advanced practice RN or not. So each nursing board is different. And so because we only have jurisdiction of California and not the other 50 states, we have to say, what is the education requirements that are safe, so that when we have a person that is licensed in another state that wants to come into California, or took their education in another state that wants to come into California, that they are equal. And that comes into a key practice at our bedside. So when you're at the bedside and you are a supervising nurse, or you're a nurse that's doing any kind of delegation of care, or even just team nursing, you want to have the thought in the back of your head that the person that's on my team, the other RN, is as competent as I would expect, and I would have that kind of understanding. And so with our licensing process, we validate that. We validate that the education is the same. We validate that they start to work on continuing education. A new law introduced that goes into effect this January will be that we also require an implicit bias course that is completed within the first 2 years of licensure when they come in from out of state, because as our pre-licensure school requires, is you have to have that 1 hour of implicit bias training as part of your graduation requirements prior to being able to complete your program. Then we look at, everybody has to have a background check. And so when you have a nurse that comes into California, you can have that assumption in your mind that the person next to you that you're working next to has been prepared educationally the same. And so this is a call out. It does change the education standards, makes it different from what we require in our pre-licensure programs here in California. And kind of, as some of the stakeholders have put out for discussion, maybe lowered the bar. And that might be something that you guys want to talk about here. Is it lowering the bar that they don't have a laboratory component of these related sciences? Or are we able to justify that because they've been practicing in good standing, because there's not complaints brought against them, because they haven't had any gross negligence and such that come in their previous practice, and that's sat, I believe it's in here for 3 years, is that correct, Garrett?
That 2 years, it looks like.
2 years, sorry.
If they've been in practice for 2 years.
They've been in practice for 2 years, so getting them through that new graduate kind of part of growth where you kind of want to give them that little bit of flexibility there, that we can now say assuredly that we are protecting the public. And when we talk about the board as protecting the public, we are not only protecting the patients that we're providing the care to, we are also protecting our nurses that are working with them in teams, that are delegating care, that are supervising care, that are working with other healthcare practitioners so that they can have that same assumption. So hopefully that's been able to give you guys some background on this, start a conversation, get your feedback. And while you guys are talking about this, keep in mind if there's other areas that you think that we might want to address going forward. I have had some conversations out there where people think that MedSurg and Jerry should be a combined course. And if that's something that you guys want to kind of take into consideration at the end of this, we can agendaize that for another committee so that we can start that conversation. But these are the stuff that we're looking at. We know that our education requirements are working. Our NCLEX pass rates are the best in the nation. And even throughout the COVID kind of waivers and stuff that we came in, we do still hold the top slot in the nation for having the best NCLEX pass rates. But we did see an across the board drop in every single one of our NCLEX pass rates over the last 2 years. And so that to me is concerning. So when we look at these provisions, we need to take that into consideration, because if we have a student that has paid $200,000 of a student loan fee and dedicated 2 to 3 years of their life to go back to school, role modeling that for their community and their family, and they graduate with a degree that they cannot obtain licensure with, that is truly not a protection of the public. And so lowering education standards may not always be the answer. So that's something that we need to talk about in here as well. So I will open it back up to the committee. It looks like Garrett has something he wants to say, and we'll start the conversations.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lori. That was a really great overview, especially for people who are not, because this is a combination of education and workforce, experts. And so perhaps workforce experts are not aware of all the nuances and the intricacies of the educational path. So that was very helpful. I really appreciate it. I'd like to see if anybody has any thoughts before I'd like to give my thoughts last.
Hi, it's Janine. I just wanted to put from my very narrow focus in surgical services that with not having the didactic and the lab together, it would have been very hard for me to connect the dots in anatomy and in microbiology. And as we train new graduates right out of school into surgical services, we rely heavily on all three of those areas of science. And they have to be strong to progress in their education. And they can't really progress well unless they have a solid foundation. So I absolutely agree with everything Lori said, that I'm not sure it's always the answer for expediency to lower our standards. California is one of the best nursing organizations in the country. A National Council State Boards of Nursing always reflects what California does before making a decision. And I hope that, I believe you mentioned Arizona State may have that discordant type of alignment for their education. I would defer to Dr. Altman for things like that. But in terms of post-licensure with new grads, it's very important that they have that great foundation in order to be successful in the clinical arena.
Thanks,
Are
Janine.
you able to see that they're successful if they have 2 years practicing safely? I think one of the things to kind of ask, and I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here, because these are always the questions that I receive across my desk, is most of the time, the sciences are a prerequisite to get into nursing courses. That they have to have a B or better in the sciences in order to do that. And so if they have successfully completed without the lab component, a B or better, they've progressed through all of their academic rigor for each one of the courses, came out on top, passed the NCLEX, became licensed in another state, and have worked for 2 years without any errors. Would that satisfy that requirement? Would that be able to then attest essentially that they have been able to connect the dots and they're be able to practice safely without having that laboratory component. And so then at that point, could those nurses endorse into California, and we could rest assured that our patients are protected, and that also the nurses that they are working with at the bedside are protected and can rely on them in teamwork and group decisions and troubleshooting and responding appropriately and identifying stuff. And when we're dealing with micro and lab and we're dealing with COVID and stuff, really seeing how transmission happens and how we can work to not do that and to stop some of those hospital acquired infections, et cetera, because it's really where that basis comes from, right? All the way down to the basic of antibiotics. So these are some of the things to do that. Would that track record be able to then show that they could have the same competence and the same preparatory level as someone who's educated within California under these guidelines?
I mean, actually, I do want to respond to that. I think one of the questions that I have, so I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in with my comments, but I will open it up. There's two issues. One is, for me, is the workforce. That we need more nurses in California, and I'm not suggesting that we, look at all of the prereqs or the requisite knowledge and experience that people need to have. I'm just going to put that out there. Janine, I totally agree with what you're saying. I just question the concept of a lab. My question is, in Arizona, are we seeing worse nursing care? Because there's a lot of nurses who graduate from Arizona State. So does Arizona have worse care in the surgical services? Let's just take that as an example. In Arizona, because they don't have labs in micro. Now, of course, more education. I'm fully, as you can probably see, I've done a lot of education. So I think education is good, and I heartily encourage it to everyone. But the question then for me becomes, what is the outcome of practice? Are we seeing worse, surgical site infections because they didn't take a lab in Arizona or other states where they don't require a lab? So I think part of it is we also have to look not only at the education, but we also have to look at the outcomes of practice. To Lori's point, it just dawned on me the concept of, well, what are the outcomes? And if Arizona has worse, in your case, surgical site infections because they don't take a lab, then that's something to consider. But I don't know, do we have any data around that?
No, and so that's the reason, is because like what we said is when people can graduate from the same program, but have taken 2 passes on their prerequisites. And so it is not a standard that everybody that comes in from Arizona does not have micro with lab or does not have an A&P with lab. It's that it's not a requirement there. So that student could still choose to do a micro with lab, could still choose to do an A&P with lab. They could have started their nursing education in California and moved to Arizona so that their prerequisites and co-requisites are already checked the box, right? So there is not a way to delineate out a specific subgroup to study that. So it is a mix. And so we cannot do that kind of generalized outcome and get any kind of qualitative or quantitative measures with that. We just have to kind of understand, like, in the effort of not decreasing our education standards on the education side, but really balancing it with the workforce, right? You don't want to open up a slippery slope. You don't want it to be, now we're making all these provisions for out-of-state RNs to come in that may not be adequately prepared. That a nurse at the bedside, and I could speak, I'm a nurse as well, is I did not know that when I was a bedside nurse. I did not know until I was in NEC and then into my EO role that each board of nursing had a different scope of practice, that each board of nursing had a different education standard, that each board of nursing had a different background. I didn't know that as a bedside RN. So when I'm functioning at the level of a bedside RN and we're both managing a code or managing an emergency or assessing a new patient that comes in, my expectation was that they were trained the same as me, that they were educated the same as me, that we all had the same scope of practice. And that was my expectation as a bedside nurse. And I think that happens more than it doesn't happen based on the email and the phone calls that I receive. And so that's where we need to take that into consideration. If that is the expectation at the bedside, that each one of the nurses that I'm on shift with will take care of the patient the same way, has the same preparation, the same background, the same kind of scope, that's what we need to focus on. That's our outcome, right? That really is that theory practice gap. Has that been identified? And can we ensure that our nurses are safe, that our patients are safe? Because that is the impetus of our board, is that safety.
Right. But again, not trying to, disagree, because I'm not disagreeing at all. The question then becomes, does lab actually, for micro or anatomy or physiology, does that contribute to patient safety? It's not an educational question. It's a question of impact. And if there are schools out there that are graduating people who allow for prerequisites to not include laboratory, then if we believe educationally that those labs are prerequisite for safe and good patient care, then we would see a decrease in quality in those areas that do not require a lab. And so the other thing is the concept of lifelong learning. I mean, sure, some people have to wait a whole lot of time between their time of prerequisites and the time they actually finish school. And so the question is, does people's knowledge age out if they're not using it? So is it checking a box, or is it actually integrated learning, where they're building upon and stacking upon the information that they've learned from before? And I'll tell you that there is some literature that's saying that we have siloed learning, that people learn something and then they go off and they do something else, and then they don't use it for some time, and then they forget about it. So, I mean, those are all questions. And, can people learn some of this information like antibiotic stewardship, on the job, and remind them, this is how, remember there's gram positive and there's gram negative, bacteria, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my second point, is the concept of lifelong learning is actually more important for me, at least from my perspective. And then the third is, one of the things that I want to make sure that we are not disenfranchising, again, I'm not opposed to the 2 years of good standing, but our military partners. So somebody's partners in the military, and they go through, let's say, boot camp, and then they get deployed to some place like San Diego. They're coming from North Carolina, they're coming to San Diego. Their trailer partner, I hate to say that word, but that seems to be the language that's used, is the trailing partner comes along, and they just finished nursing school, right? And so now we have this trailing partner issue that they now need to find remediation. They got lifted out of North Carolina, and now they're in California. It's hard. Again, not saying that I'm not opposed to the concept, but I'm just saying that these are some of the things that we need to think through, especially from a workforce perspective. But also, to your point, Lori, is that we want to make sure that they're educated appropriately. But really think about the concept of education and what is acceptable to us in California.
Yeah, and so to kind of follow up with that, a couple things to kind of point out there is the one thing that I can think of when you're talking about your military partners, and really anybody that comes into California on endorsement that's been educated within the United States, is when they come in, they can apply for a temporary license. That temporary license gives them 6 months licensed here, working, while they can go back and complete that microbiology course with lab that might be 6 to 8 weeks in length. Clear that deficiency and obtain an official license. The other thing that is there for them is, say they can't do that within the first 6 months, they can renew that temporary license, and they can be here an entire year. operating on a temporary license while they complete those education requirements. And so that's a thing to take into consideration as well, as we have people on temporary license here that are working in this state right now without these microbiology with lab or anatomy physiology with lab for up to 1 year. And that is true with our military partners now. At the passing of the new law that went into effect in July, they get 1 year automatic temporary license that they don't have to pay for or get a second renewal after the first 6 months. And so they're here and they're working for that year without these requirements, but they are obtaining those requirements. So that is one thing that I do want to point out on that example that you used. And so that's up for consideration also. So really just kind of working through that process and kind of having that discussion.
Great. I've spoken too much, so other people, your perspective. Yes. Kathy, I can see.
Hi, thanks. Kathy Hughes. So I have a couple quick questions. Do we know about how many out-of-state nurses this would apply to? Like how many nurses that might be able to practice in California if under these circumstances? So I just kind of wondered about that. And then your military partners, that would only apply then if they wanted to, if they had been practicing out of state for less than 2 years, because if this reg goes into effect, if they practice for at least 2 years, they wouldn't have to do the remediation and get the lab component. And then my other comment is looking at the regs, it says more than 2 years. What's more than 2 years? Because it doesn't say like a minimum of 2 years, at least 2 years. It says more than 2 years. So is that up to 2 years, or do they actually have to be in practice for 2 years and 1 day? And then the other question that came up in my mind is the whole issue around compact state. You know, California has fought off the becoming part of the compact state because of our education differences from other states. So then if we were looking at becoming part of a compact, it would still be, we would only do that if they had been practicing for at least 2 years. Thanks.
So a couple things with that, Kathy, is right now our board is not looking at becoming a compact. They have voted to oppose that. We do have a new board, so we might see where that goes in the future. But part of our strategic planning, which is a 5-year strategic plan, is to evaluate the pros and cons of that compact. And truly, we need to have a lot of evidence. The more and more that I dig into that, the more and more I realize that education is not the same state to state, that licensure requirements is not the same state to state, that scope of practice is not the same state to state. And so to join a compact, just to join the compact, I don't know that that's where our board is at this particular moment. Because the more evidence that we're gathering, there might be more differences than similarities. But we need to get the evidence, and that's really what is out in that strategic plan. And maybe even, look at, with that evidence, just updating our website, right? That says if you're educated in Arizona, please remember that micro with lab is not required from your institution, but if you want to come to California, please complete it. If you're educated in Florida, please ensure that your theory and your clinicals are concurrent. And so those are some of the things that we could better do on our website to communicate so that they're prepared in advance of what the requirements are. And so when you're looking at education and enrolling into that, you can say, you know what, I know that at some point in my life, I want to come to California. Let me go to their website. Let me see what's required that I can take now preemptively when I'm doing my nursing courses to ensure that I can go over there. Those are all something that can be done. And so this is not an entry into the compact, but this is an entry into say, what can we do to assist people coming into our state who have practiced in good standing and who are licensed here. This does not affect the nursing content specific courses, your med surg, OB, peds, psych, mental health, etc. So this is only on the general education. And I don't have the specific numbers of because we don't necessarily deny their license. What we do is we make their license deficient. We say that their application is deficient and they can clear that deficiency up to become licensed in California. So we are not denying anybody's license, but what we are doing is saying, hey, you know, you have everything except this. You provide proof of completing this, you can now be licensed in California. That is a hardship for some of them that have been practicing for 20 years, haven't taken a microbiology or anatomy physiology course in 20 years. And going back to school is daunting, even if it is an online 6-week course that they have to kind of work through in the intersession in summer. And so we would not be addressing any of the nursing specific courses. So, we'll get people that come in and maybe their clinicals were not concurrent. We have a court decision that we don't accept any Excelsior grads after a certain year because of the concurrency issue. It would not affect that. We don't, if they are educated out of state or internationally and they don't have a OB course. We wouldn't bring them into California and license them without them completing that OB course, because when we license an RN, we license them to work in any field that they want to. And so we can't put a licensing restriction that says you can work in any field with the exception of OB because you didn't take OB. Because that's not how it works. When you go into the ER and you're working in the ER, you might take care of an OB patient. Any patient under 20 weeks pregnant stays in the ER. Over 20 weeks goes out. But if they're not coming in for a pregnancy-related issue and they were in a MVA, then we'll treat them. And then once we clear them, send them up to OB to get that last final clearance. And so we cannot silo that off, which is why we're only addressing the prerequisite, which is the sciences part. With the statement in 1410.5 that you do have to take those sciences, that you do have to pass those sciences. They have to be there. They just don't have the lab component. And so I don't have specific numbers. I don't have any way that I can get those specific numbers for you, Kathy. I wish I did. That'd be helpful. But I can say that it is an issue. We do hear about it frequently within our public information unit, within our licensing unit. It is a daily interaction that we do have on this.
Saskia, I see Saskia, and then I see Joanne.
Thank you, Garrett. Appreciate it. I just had a couple quick things. The first thing I wanted to say was I agree with Garrett, and I think he makes some good points in when you were talking, Garrett, about the connection of labs to patient safety. I think that's important to look at that and how it's playing out in practice. And I would also ask and question, isn't infection control itself also, though, taught in nursing programs? And I just wanted to make that point. The other question, I had two other items. One is technical, and the other is a clarifying question, and that is, again, on the 2-year time period. I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. It says that you have to be in good standing for more than 2 years. And so I guess the question is, does the applicant have to show that they were in good standing for that entire 2-year period, or is it on the board to go back and take a look and make sure that they were in good standing for that entire 2-year period?
We utilize nurses. So nurses is what we would utilize to see that they're in good standing. And so we would go and do the same process that we do with anybody coming in, is we do check their background. We check any discipline on their license by utilizing nurses. And then we make a licensing decision based on that information. And it may just be that they are licensed, but with a provisional license, so that they have to start immediately into probation or something at that point. There's some additional monitoring that could happen. And so we would do that good standing by reviewing nurses to ensure that it hasn't gone.
Okay, and is that a moment in time or is that a look back? So let's say, for example, as Kathy mentioned, it could be more than 2 years. Let's say somebody's coming in with 10 years of practice. So are you looking back that entire 10-year period? Is that how that works?
We look at 7 years right now because of the law 2138, and it's a 7-year look, and so that is. But again, if they're currently on probation in another state, we would then take that into consideration, et cetera. And then if there was patterns, so even if it was prior to the 7 years, if it is egregious or some sort, then that can allow it to come forward. And Reza might actually be able to chime in to give a little more specifics on how we look at that, because that is definitely part of the good standing. And then one other thing that kind of came up that I forgot to address earlier is Garrett had mentioned that, that competence and such is kind of on workforce, right? The board does not establish competence. We establish safe entry into practice, right? And so competence is established by all of the healthcare organizations that employ. And so there is a competency that happens out in the field when they're working. But is it prudent for us to have lower educational standards so that competency is more difficult for them to obtain? Or they have to lengthen a new grad program or lengthen an onboarding training to go from maybe a 3-month onboarding for new grads to now looking at 1-year residencies with new grads because they're not able to address that theory practice gap. Is that something that we really need to be aware of? So those are some of those too.
Lori, I'm sorry. I do want to pay attention to time. We have 10 minutes. I have Joanne, then I have Hazel, and then we do need to open to public comment, and we do need to make a recommendation. So, Joanne?
May I? I'm sorry, Garrett. Can I do my? I just have one technical thing. No, okay.
Yeah.
I'll be quick. So I just had a quick question on the language, or pointing out on the language. Subdivision A contains a definition of the phrase "proof of successful completion," but that phrase actually isn't used in the substantive provision under subdivision B. So I would just flag that and maybe changing, instead of saying includes proof of already successful completing, to say include proof of successful completion of, just so it mirrors that definition. So that was just it. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption there, Garrett.
No, thank you so much, Saskia, and I didn't mean to cut you off. You are always very valuable. I love both you and Kathy and Jeannie's for comments, but let's go to Joanne too.
Sure, I will be quick. I think in general, I appreciate all of the comments that have been made here. And I generally find the proposed language, perhaps with our legal experts modification from Saskia, to make sure that the language is really clear and appropriate. But, I think one of the reasons I support this type of a move is that I recognize that not all lab classes are created equal. And the kind of experience a person is having in their prerequisites as they're thinking about nursing, preparing to embark upon nursing, having that lab experience I would anticipate, has a very different component in their trajectory educationally and into practice than for somebody who's been practicing for 15 years and is told, oh, go do this online thing where you're going to have some, whatever you're doing at home lab component so you can check a box. And those are educationally very, very different experiences. The latter seems like you're a qualified nurse with 15 years of experience, but we're going to go make you check a box and you're going to do something. I'm trying to figure out how to say it without using bad language. You're going to do something half-baked to check the box, which is very different than I think the intention, or what I anticipate was the intention of the prerequisite expectations when they were written for somebody who is going through an educational pathway from true novice into being ready for their first practice job. So I think this is a nice way to try to thread that needle, and would happily take practice experts quibbling on whether it's 2 years or 4 years or 1 year or whatever that window should be. But I think it's important to thread that needle for all the reasons that have been stated.
Great, thank you so much, Joanne. Hazel?
Yes, and I just want to go on record that coming from workforce or the employer groups, the last thing we want is to widen the theory practice gap any more than it already is. Even with graduates in California, and no offense to anybody working in our nursing education, there is a lot, as Lori has mentioned, there is a lot of competency validation that still falls on the workforce or in the employer groups to ensure that safety. Having said that, one other caveat that perhaps I would like some clarification on is that 2-year window of okay, if you've been practicing for 2 years, is that actually practicing, or have they had their license for more than 2 years? And as we all know on the phone, those are two very different scenarios. So just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
They are. And I think that we could update that to include that they have to be practicing for 2 years. So we would have to require some proof of that. Heather, can you make a note on that, and also the technical change that Saskia brought up?
Yes, I will. Absolutely.
Great. Anyone else? I don't want to. Yes, Saji.
I think everything was already said, but I still agree on requiring the nurses from outside the state to take at least the laboratory for these minor subjects, I will say. But the wording on on 1410.5b, it says will not need to retake any anatomy, physiology, or microbiology courses. Retake, does that mean they already take it before? So, I don't think they have to retake it if they're practicing more than 2 years already. And if I think we already discussed that that if they're already practicing more than 2 years, we don't know what is more than 2 years here. So I don't think they will need to retake, to do it again if they already did it previously. So I think that wording here needs to be we need to be conscious of this wordings here, I think, because that can lead us to somewhere else. If they already retake it, we don't want for them to be requiring again to take another courses. But the thing is, the point of not having laboratory, I think that's something different. We came. My background is from the Philippines, and we're required for laboratory to be completed as a minor subjects, not minor, but part of the anatomy and physiology, especially microbiology, including in nursing minor subjects. So I will still have to be on requiring nurses from out of the state to take the laboratory courses. It's not it's for the it's not only for the patient safety but for public safety. I think you were right on giving them you're not just asking the nurses to check a box, but they need to interpret what they're looking at, not only giving them assignment on a patient who had, let's say, infection of the urine. They need to know what's going on before we set them up on this. We don't want them to fail it also. And regarding anatomy and physiology, we work a lot with the nurses who are working in orthopedics. So I don't know if there's no laboratory on how to do their body mechanics. Doing this, I think it's not only a problem for public safety, it's a problem for the nurse. It's themselves. If they don't have these techniques that we need to learn before they go to their assignments. Otherwise, I think that should be it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Saji. Just for clarity, for me, is that you would actually not agree with this moving this forward, because the proposal is to remove the requirement for laboratory of anatomy, physiology, or microbiology if the nurse has been in practice seeing patients for 2 years or greater. So you would not be, you're not in agreement with this.
No.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. I just wanted for clarity. in my head. Anybody else? No. So I will like to open it up for, wait, so I guess we need to make a motion then, or there's possible action. What's the possible action, Lori, that you're hoping for?
You could decide not to make a motion. This could be information only. If you felt that there was something that if anybody, not just Garrett, if anybody on the team feels that there should be a motion that they say we accept with the edits suggested here, and then you would specify those edits, or you could say we deny that you don't believe that this is something that should go through. That's something they can do, but you can also just defer any action, and we can take the suggestions and stuff that you guys have made here as stakeholder input, add those in to our process of editing and kind of bringing this to fruition and move forward. It's completely up to this committee what you want to do at that point. So if anybody has a motion they want to make, that's fine. If not, we can open to public comment and take it as a deferred action.
So
yeah.
this
is, I think, Lori.
Real quick, this is Reza. You could also technically go ahead and take public comment and then make your motion. It doesn't necessarily have to be, in one order or the other. If you think public comment may help kind of guide the motion or vice versa.
Sure. I think, let me just say this in general, not specific to this particular agenda item, but I think we're asked for our opinions. So we probably should take a stance. But that's just a proposal, just in general. So maybe I will, somebody else was going to speak up. And
this is Kathy. Sorry, I just have a question. Can we could just make a motion to put forth those two proposed edits, right? That the A1 definition should be reflected in B, and that rather than licensed in other jurisdictions, it would say practicing in other jurisdictions. My other recommendation would be that it says at least 2 years. Because I think more than 2 years is just kind of I mean, in regulatory language, I'm not sure that phrase exists, but I could be wrong.
Okay, Kathy. So is that your proposed motion?
Yes.
Okay, great. Is there a second?
I will second that motion as I understand it, and I'll say it just to make sure that we're in agreement about her motion and my seconding that we support this type of a modification to the regulations with the language changes that have been discussed, or an exploration of other language changes that may be appropriate in the process of that type of a change.
That Kathy proposed.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is Reza. I just want to clarify. You could make the motion a slight difference in the way you could make the motion. One is to simply have it address the technical corrections that have been brought up. The other is to make those technical corrections and support the motion. Support the proposal. You could just make those technical corrections, but kind of be silent on whether you are generally supportive of it or not, or you could take an official position of whether you're supportive of it or not. We've kind of heard, that both sides are represented on this committee. So just want to clarify, because in the original motion, I didn't hear support, but that was added in. So if that is part of your motion, Kathy, to include support for this, just want to be clear on that.
I think initially my motion was for those 3 technical changes. That was just...
I'll second that motion. It probably makes sense for these to be separate motions, the changes versus whether there even is a second motion on supporting it. So I will second the motion for the technical changes.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion is just to, for now, the motion is just to move forward those technical corrections, not necessarily take a support or opposed position, which you can do via a second motion after this one is resolved. And then if I could, just for myself and for the note takers, review the technical corrections. So if anyone else has them, feel free to jump in.
So one would be, as I heard them, adjust the proof of completion to mirror the proof of already successfully completing. The second one would be to, instead of for more than 2 years, say at least 2 years. And the third would be to include a proof of practicing. Was that, did I miss that?
Kathy, is that,
yeah, I think that, yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
we want to make sure we capture your intent. Oh, for some reason I can't hear you. Maybe it's me.
No, I'm talking to myself. Yeah, the A1 definition should be reflected in section B, that language that Saskia had mentioned earlier, that it should be practicing for at least 2 years in other jurisdictions.
Heather and Reza, do you have that? Kathy's?
Yes. I have that, yes, from Heather.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So it's been moved and seconded, so we'll open it up for public comment.
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment."
This is Reza again, just for our members of the public who may want to speak on this. The motion, as we just clarified, is regarding only the technical corrections. As I said, we could make another motion. I don't know if anyone will take that up, but to advance a support or opposed position on it. But members of the public, you can feel free to comment on anything related to this agenda item, the merits of this proposal, the technical corrections, any additional corrections, or whatever it may be regarding this. So you're not limited to just the motion on the table at this time.
Committee Chair Chan, there are no public requests for a comment. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thanks, Mark. Okay, so we have a motion that's been seconded, so we need to vote on the technical amendments as proposed by Kathy, as read by Heather. So I will go down the list. So Tanya Altman.
Yes.
Thank you. Tammy Van Holt.
Yes.
Thank you, Tammy. Janine.
Yes.
Thanks, Janine. Saji.
Technical change, yes.
Great, thank you. Kim Do.
Yes.
Thanks, Kim. Hazel Torres.
Yes.
Great, thanks, Hazel. Garrett Chan, yes. Kathy Hughes.
Yes.
Thanks, Kathy. Saskia Kim.
Yes.
Great, thanks, Saskia. Joanne Spetz.
Yes.
Great, thanks, Joanne. And Sandra Miller.
Yes.
Great, thank you. The motion passes. We did have a second motion for consideration that Joanne brought up, which was to, if I remember correctly, so correct me if I'm wrong, Joanne, is to take a support position of the proposed draft regulations for 1410.5 as amended.
Yes, I will make the motion just because I'm interested in us closing this out with a sense of where the committee is at.
Great, thanks, Joanne. So I need a second.
I second. This is Hazel.
Thank you, Hazel. So it's been open, motion and seconded. Just for clarity, Reza, if I heard your instructions to the public before, did that satisfy the public comment period or did it not?
Yes, my hope was that we would, well, the intention there was that we would have one public comment for the entire agenda item, which is really what the Open Meeting Act requires, is one public comment period per agenda item, not necessarily per motion. Doesn't mean you can't open it up again, but that was kind of my intention, was just in case there is another motion that we don't necessarily need to, hold it open again for public comment. So you can proceed to the vote if you wish.
Okay, so I heard, from my perspective, I heard your instructions clearly saying that it was for the agenda item in total. So I'm going to then call for the vote from the committee. So I'll start with Dr. Tanya Altman.
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Tammy Vettel.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Janine Graves.
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Saji de Guzman. Saji, I'm sorry.
Yes. Hello?
Yes. I can hear you. So your vote is yes to support. Yeah. Saji, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. I'm registering your vote as yes, you want to support this draft regulatory language.
Sure, yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Kim Do.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Hazel Torres?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Garrett Chan, yes. Kathy Hughes?
Yes.
Thanks, Kathy. Saskia Kim?
Yes.
Thanks, Saskia. Dr. Joanne Spetz?
Yes.
Great, thank you. And Sandra Miller?
Yes.
Great, thank you. We have a unanimous yes to recommend the draft regulatory language for 1410.5 with the amendments that Kathy had made and Saskia had made. So thank you so much. Great, robust discussion. I'm so pleased to see a diverse variety of opinions be expressed. That's very important because we can all learn through that process. So we have gotten through our agenda. That's fantastic. With only 12 minutes, a little bit over. There is one thing that I would like to do before we adjourn. And I just want to say two things. One is that we're going to be talking a lot around the statutes and regulations as they apply to the Nurse Practice Act. And I want to share my screen for just a moment because the BRN has done a really great job at kind of making it very accessible about the Nurse Practice Act, which is the legal framework that, tells us, gives us the authority to do the things that we need to do, and it gives us guidance. So I just want to remind the public, but also the committee members, that on the BRN website, which is rn.ca.gov, If you scroll down to this area under Welcome to the Board of Nursing, there's the Nurse Practice Act. So if you click on the Nurse Practice Act, there are two parts to the Nurse Practice Act. There's the California Business and Professions Code, which has all of the laws that have been passed by legislation. And then the California Code of Regulations, Title 16, which are things that the board brings forward or other people bring forward through the Administrative Procedures Act, so the things that we talked about today. And it has all of the regulations that carry the same weight of law for people to follow. And so I just wanted to point this out to the committee members and the public, just in case if you don't have ready access or you don't look at this on a regular basis, that you can go to the BRN website, scroll down to the Nurse Practice Act, and it'll take you exactly to the various sections of statute and regulation that we'll be talking about likely a lot over the time that we're together. And then just the second thing, the last thing is I want to thank again the board staff, Lori and her team who, keep us all together. We very much appreciate it. We're sorry if we don't always answer the questions that you're asking us to do, but and look forward to for the new members to the California government and especially the DCA to go to the DCA training and orientation to make sure that we're all functioning under the Bagley-Keene Act. I want to thank legal counsel, Heather and Reza, for your support and your guidance. I'm super thankful to Janine for being the vice chair. I'm really excited to work with you today. And with that, I'd like to adjourn the meeting at 1:15. So thank you all.